Thanks for keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. We got a lot to get to this show. We're going to talk about how we got here, how Arizona is in this position, and rehash a little bit of yesterday and then talk about the Big 12. But we're going to go school by school here and talk about all of this. Let's get started here on Locked On Wildcats.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Keeping it locked on, Wildcats. I'm your host, Mike Luke. All right, we got a lot to get through this show. We're going to talk about what happened here to the Pac-12. And first and foremost, I think the question that everybody needs to know, or the question that we all need to know is how exactly did we get here? And I think a big part of the equation is, and we talked about it yesterday, but we're going to talk about it again today because it's important and I want to talk about it. The big thing about it is this was done, Arizona was undone by academic snobbery, pretentious nature. Everything involved right here came with the Pac-12, and a lot of it too is just not understanding sports. And what I mean by that is not understanding the importance of sports. And again, that's kind of where it is. We talked about Michael Crow a great deal, and not only is Michael Crow, I think, emblematic of everything that's kind of wrong with sports here at the U of A or in the Pac-12, but again, just another guy that does doesn't really quite get it. And what I mean by when he doesn't quite get it is he doesn't quite get it. And I think that's what's frustrating for a lot of people. When you talk about the facilities and whatnot, they're not good enough. When you talk about the media deal that was there, those weren't good enough either. So that's all kind of important stuff right there that we all need to be keep a close eye on. Now, a couple things too that we also need to talk about is the rest of the priorities in the conference right there, because a lot of these priorities in conference were not, to put it mildly, were not really ever taken care of. I think one of these things one of the things that you look at is Cal, Stanford, Cal especially. Cal didn't care about sports, and I think that's a problem because I remember when I was growing up, Cal did care about sports. Even though they were cheating, it was fun. You had Jason Kidd, you had Todd Bozeman, you had Lamont Murray, you had Sharif Abdur-Rahim. That was fun, especially at Cal. Then you had Aaron Rodgers. You had Reggie Robertson, Saguaro Great, who started there. You had a lot of different entities. Stanford was always solid in basketball, and more than solid, like a top 15 program good in basketball. So there's that. Then you got some other schools too, like Oregon State. I get that Wayne Tinkle went to an Elite Eight. That's cool. Totally understand that. I appreciate that. Tip of the cap to Wayne Tinkle on that one. But also Wayne Tinkle was has not been a good coach there. I don't really know how else to put this, but Wayne Tinkle has not been a good coach. And not only has he not been a good coach, he has been a pretty subpar when he hasn't been able to bring out his talent. He's always had an issue right there. And that's always been I think that's been a problem. I think that's been a tad problematic for him, is that when he doesn't have his son or the coach's son, it's been an issue for him. And again, do you watch him and say that that's a man who understands what he's doing? No, I don't think so, and I don't think that you probably think that either. And it's just not good enough for, to be honest. second. And when I say and wouldn't surprise me, it's kind of the way it is. I would doubt Stanford does, but I could certainly see Cal doing that. Got some other schools then, too, that you're wondering what exactly is going on. ASU is another one. You got, like I said, those facilities are not good enough right there. They're just not. And for Michael Crow to sit here and tell people that they are, you got a lot of these guys. But when Michael Crow is kind of the voice of reason, I apologize about that, having a slight connection issue right there. But when Michael Crow is your voice of reason right there in the Pac-12, that's always going to be a little bit of an issue. And he's the one, again, that kind of put Arizona, put a lot of different schools in this. And there's a reason that Larry Scott, I think, was kind of rubber stamped throughout all of this. It's not good. And quite frankly, a lot of people deserve a lot better than what he was able to do for them. Now, when it comes to some of these other situations in play right here, I think it's also fair to ask, how did we get this far without a media deal? Well, we got this far without a media deal because these conferences drastically overplayed their hand. They drastically overplayed their brand. See what I'm saying right there? And survival, it's about getting everything to where it needs to be, and that has not happened here with the Pac-12. Streaming wasn't an option at this point, and not only was streaming not an option, it just wasn't. There was no possibility of this ever working, to be honest with you, because we're not far enough along. Now, streaming is the wave of the future. Everybody knows that, but that future is still probably 5, 6, 7 years off. The majority of people's parents are not going to want to watch a game on Apple TV. That's just the way it is. People like Michael Crow don't get that. And not only do they not get it, it's I think it's something that is completely foreign to them, to be honest with you. So there's that. Then I'll tell you what, let's talk about eBay Motors first, and then we're going to talk about some of this. Now we're going to talk about Oregon and Washington and what how they played in all of this. But first, hold on. eBay Motors. All right. I don't know why this is not showing here. This is very annoying. All right. ebaymotors.com. The right parts, the right fit, the right prices. eBay guaranteed fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right. Check it out. eBay Motors. Again, cut out the middleman right there. Save some money for yourself. eBay Motors is here to help you. Help them help you, because eBay Motors is right here for you. Okay. And again, a mechanic, this is a great thing. Get this stuff, then go to the mechanic, get it taken care of. Save some money in the process. I can guarantee you that I am doing that one as well, because I am a cat. All right. Now, the Northwest schools right here. Oregon and Washington here, that always felt like a matter of time before they were going to bounce to the Big Ten. And I think they were just strictly using this as a negotiation tactic. And not only were they using this as a negotiation tactic, they were using it as a, here's how media played out. Here's how media is played out. Not only was everybody, all the national types fooled, but when I say that the national types were fooled, I'm saying that they were fooled, because they bought all that hook, line, and sink yesterday that these Oregon and Washington were going into this meeting with every indication that they were going to get that. And that is, I can guarantee you of that. That was always going to be somewhat of a dilemma. So they put it out there. They leak it to McMurphy, guys like that, and McMurphy and all of them, Thamel, they run with it. And then within going into the meeting, Oregon and Washington were uncomfortable with the Apple sign up like they weren't uncomfortable with it before. Then we find out within 3 or 4 hours, they're off to the Big Ten. And honestly, they're good fits, especially Washington. From a cultural, academic, athletic perspective, Washington makes a lot of sense for the conference. Oregon does too. Oregon is just so reliant on Phil Knight, though, to be able to really, to be able to really fund everything right there. And I don't know that Phil Knight is. I don't know that Phil Knight is going to be able to make this work as long as, when he does, when he moves on. We'll just put it to you like that. That's kind of where I think Phil Knight is. Now, a couple other things right here with the Pac-12 is why in the world would you have thought that Oregon and Washington were going to sign up for this? Because, again, all that they wanted was stability in this entire situation. And when I say that they wanted stability, they wanted a place that they knew that they could call home for the next 6 or 7 years. And when this next round of consolidation occurs, they were going to have a home. They don't have that in the Pac-12, and that was never going to be a case with Apple TV. They have that in the Big Ten right now, and it makes a lot of sense because, again, you got the LA schools right there. Then you got the Big Ten ones as well. Now, what does this mean then for the Corner Four schools? Now, the Corner Four schools were still the one that was going to make this one happen. And quite frankly, it makes a ton of sense because Arizona, ASU, Colorado, Utah, they were not their brands get buried on Apple TV, especially Arizona basketball. We know how much Arizona basketball means to this city, and their brands would 100% be buried on that network. That was not something that anybody wanted to have happen or occur. And so there was always that aspect in play. Then there were some other things too that you got to think about. If you're Arizona, and you have the Big 12 right there, they're offering you stability. And not only are they offering you stability, they're offering you a way to basically put your brand out there and play against the best teams in the conference. It kind of becomes a no-brainer. But if you're Bobby Robbins, you also have a few aspects in play that you got to think about. That you are an academic here. And I don't mean that in a negative light, but, there's talk that he could maybe run Stanford at some point. And if he runs Stanford, then, you don't want to piss off Stanford. So, again, the way that this unfolded was great because Arizona did all of its cursory research on getting into the Big 12, was ready to rock and roll. And then the conference came in and at the meeting, obviously the numbers weren't good enough, and Washington and Oregon said that we're bouncing. Sorry, nothing personal. We're heading out. And it makes sense. Again, when you have those kind of options, you're going to leave. And nobody should have really been taken surprised by that. I think it also just goes to show you, too, how the media is used in all of this because the media was pretty much complicit in all of this, to be honest with you, because I don't really know that anybody should have thought that there was going to be a really good Pac-12 deal that was going to be done right there. Because honestly, there was nothing to indicate that. And not only was there nothing to indicate, there was also every indication too that it was not going to be there because you don't go a year in contract negotiations and never put a media deal out there and then come up with that lame line that, the deals are just getting better and better as the year goes on. Come on. That's not how things work. We all know that right here. And so again, if you bought that hook, line, and sink, that's on you. That's not on me. You shouldn't be believing that anyways, because again, I got something. I got a island that I could sell you that you'd never be able to get to as well. But Kliavkoff was behind the curve on this the entire way, and the conference was as well. But I think deep down, everybody kind of knew that there wasn't going to be a media deal there because, again, Apple TV is pretty cutthroat. Apple TV will cut that deal and not even think twice about it because, again, they don't need you. Pac-12 needed Apple. Apple didn't need the Pac-12, and it wasn't like ESPN and Fox were going to go out of their way to try to save the Pac-12. I mean, why would they? They already are invested in the other 3 major conferences or the other 4 major conferences. Why would they send a lifeline to the Pac-12, which has behaved themselves into this situation to begin with? It made no sense, and it made no sense from day one, honestly. So there's that. Then with ASU, that was always going to be a little bit of a dilemma because what we talked about a billion times, ASU was totally fine with just staying in the conference. And not only were they totally fine with staying in the conference, they were, I think that they were drag kicking and screaming. So the fact that Michael Crow goes out there and says they did everything to try to keep the conference together, well, technically he's being honest. He did do everything to try to keep the conference together, but he was also, again, the guy that rubber stamped Larry Scott. So you don't get to have credit on both fronts right there. You're responsible for destroying the conference, but at the same time, you can't sit here and say that you also were trying to keep the conference together. That's not how things work. But that's also why it's also very impressive that we have Bobby Robbins in here that was able to massage Michael Crow's ego, because Michael Crow, again, not happy that he's being usurped by a president 15 years his junior at the University of Arizona, and probably not happy that he's being usurped by somebody that likes sports as well. So there were a lot of aspects in play here, and Arizona handled it perfectly because, again, Arizona gets into the Big 12. Nobody blames them for breaking up the Pac-12. And not only does nobody blame them, Arizona's looked at being on the cutting edge of all this stuff. So, again, there's some pretty good stuff there. Let's talk about now what the future holds for the remaining schools here. Thanks for keeping it locked on Wildcats and making it your first listen of the day. I am your host, Mike Luke. All right, the remaining schools, well, I feel kind of bad because there's a lot more Oregon State fans out there than I thought there were, honestly. I didn't know that there were this many. I feel bad for Oregon State, and I feel bad for Washington State fans to a lesser extent. I don't know why, but they're kind of left hanging now. They're kind of left hanging. I mean, it's not something that you want to see if you're a Pac-12 fan, that's for sure, or a fan of Oregon State, but they're pretty much left hanging right there. Maybe they get a lifeline from the Big 12. I doubt it, but maybe they do. Or maybe they end up in the Mountain West and they dominate that. I could see it, but Oregon State's a cute little program right there. And like I said, their fans have done, I think, a pretty good job here. Like I said, there's a lot more of them than I thought. Washington State, I think, is totally screwed. I hate saying that because Washington State's got some pretty good history, but I don't know what they're going to do. And then I would try to take major cuts to get into the Big 12 at this point. Cal, like I said, I can see Cal getting rid of sports. I don't think they really care that much about it. Stanford, I could see going independent, or I could see Stanford actually ending up at the Big 12 or a Big 10 at some point. Just because the Stanford academic brand is so big, and the fact too that they've been good at football is also a feather in their cap. But those schools, like I said, it's going to be difficult for them because maybe Oregon State gets a life raft. I don't see Washington State getting one, to be honest with you. And not only do I not see Washington State getting one, I think it's going to be very difficult for that to happen. I think Oregon State is actually viewed as a hotter commodity there. But that's just kind of where we are in college sports. I know that people don't like it. I get it. I don't necessarily love it either. But this is survival of the fittest at this point. And by survival of the fittest, I mean that you got to be able to lock this one in right here, and I think that's what's exciting about all of this. So tomorrow, though, we're going to talk about the best basketball conference in the country right now, because the Big 12 is the best basketball conference in the country. It's going to be weird being in the Big 12, being around other really good basketball programs, but it's also going to be exciting, though, because again, Arizona won't be able to get by with fool's gold. They're going to have to be able to play really well against good teams. And Tommy Lloyd is good enough that he's going to be able to get the players he needs to be able to make that one work. It's going to be exciting, though. So we're going to talk a lot about that and what Big 12 basketball will mean. And again, we will be all over that. But as always, Arizona in the Big 12, we needed this to happen. This was great news for the conference. This was great news for everybody everybody at Arizona, mainly because you stay alive, you stay relevant, and all of that continues to work out for you. But again, also big tip of the cap to President Robbins right there, and to Dave Hickey for making this one happen. You guys did yeoman's work right there. And again, trust me, I know that it wasn't easy. All right, like I said, we're going to talk Big 12 tomorrow. We're going to talk Big 12 basketball, what exactly the conference has in it, what the marquee programs are, all of that stuff. But as always, really, really appreciate you guys keeping it locked on Wildcats and making this your first listen of the day. We are in day-by-day mode. We might get to a little bit of Arizona football later in the week. We'll see. There's a lot of different options. But, again, we're going to really focus here on expansion and what has gone on with the conference. But, as always, really appreciate all of you making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day. Bear down, back the A. We will be back with you first thing tomorrow. We'll talk with you then.